I don't know anybody that I can interview, or whatever mental hurdles that you might have right now, challenges, it is simply not true, because I believe anyone needs some kind of platform.
It's like, I'm going to build this show and I'm going to hit launch. I'm going to get my 1 million downloads, and then I'll just like sit on the beach and collect sponsorship paychecks. You know what I mean?
Right.
Or figure out a different way to make this work. And so that's kind of what I teach people, Dan. It's called, I call it the credibility first method.
Welcome to another episode of the Dan Lok Show. Now, today we are doing a podcast, but we are talking about why you might want to consider doing a podcast. I'll share also a little bit story of how podcast has helped my business. And now I always want to bring on guests that I could learn from, right? How do I grow my podcast? How do I monetize my podcast? So today I have a very, very exciting guest, a very special guest. Travis there will be joining us. He is also the founder of Build Your Network. So it's not just a consultant on podcasts, but he walks the talk. So Travis, welcome to the Dan Lok Show.
Dan, thanks so much for having me, man. Happy to be here.
I'm excited. I want to pick your brains on how we could even grow our podcast, get to the next level. Like, we're doing good, but I definitely want to go to the next level. But before I get into it, take us back in the beginning. What inspired you to even start the podcast? How did you get into this podcast industry?
Yeah, good question, man. So I actually was a door-to-door sales guy for a really long time. That's kind of how I started my, quote unquote career there. I started in college, basically, as just kind of a way to make some extra money. And it just started going really well. I just had a knack for it, I guess. And then I also just worked hard at trying to learn how to be better at it, tried to spend time with people that were really good at it. And it kind of took me past college, and I ended up just staying in door-to-door. Even after I was done with college, I didn't like the field or whatever that I'd gotten my degree in. So I just decided, let's just go ahead and keep doing this door-to-door thing. Seems to be working out pretty well. Seems to be making some good money, paying the bills. And so I just kind of attacked it head on. And the first year that I did it full time outside of college, I was already married at the time, married my high school sweetheart. I was 21. We bought our first house, had a mortgage and a wife, and was knocking doors and pulled six figures the first year that I went full time knocking doors, 100% commission, door-to-door sales. Started recruiting people, managing and training salespeople. And after a while, I basically just got to the point, Dan, where I took a look into my future, and I just didn't like the version of it that I was seeing. It was basically like, if I'm going to keep in this industry, either I have to become an owner of a company, or I'm going to be on this constant hamster wheel of going out and earning another commission the next day. Every single day I got to go out, I got to knock on doors, and I got to earn my paycheck. And I didn't like the version of that, looking in the future at age 31 or age 32 or whatever. I didn't like that version. And so I knew at that time, I didn't exactly know what I was going to do. All my experience was in door-to-door sales. And my degree was in, actually, funny enough, Bible and church ministry. So I grew up in kind of a very tight-knit religious bubble culture type of a thing that basically pushed people to ministry, push to ministry. And so my degree was in Bible and church ministries, and it was unaccredited. So it was already more useless than a regular degree in Bible and church ministries.
It's not even credited.
So couldn't do much with that. And I didn't, the only skill set that I had was sales and door-to-door and stuff. And so at that point I was like, man, what do I do? I have no idea what to do here. And back against the wall at this point, like I said, I was married and had a mortgage. So I couldn't just go back and sleep on my mom's couch until I figured out what I wanted to be when I grew up or whatever. I had to really figure it out. Back against the wall, just kind of for the first time ever dove into personal development and started reading some books and listening to some audiobooks and podcasts and things like that. And I came across a show, and I know that you know him, with John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire.
Yes.
And he started talking about you can start your own podcast, you can do this and that. And so after listening to his show for a while, it just kind of was like, you know what, I think that this podcasting thing would be pretty fun. Let's give it a go.
But I think that all that years of experience taught you how to be a good communicator. So because in order to be a great salesperson, you have to be knowing how to be a good listener, how to ask good questions. So naturally, a lot of those skills transfer. I can understand, because you're thinking about if I'm 55, 60 years old, do I still want to be doing door to door,
Yeah,
like that
exactly.
would not look good, right?
Yeah, I worked with guys that were 50, 55 that were still knocking doors. And like they may, and the thing is, if that's your thing, go for it. You know what I mean? Like if you want to do that, go for it. But like, I knew that wasn't what I wanted to be doing. I knew that I didn't want to be 50 still knocking on doors. And so I knew like, I got to either like change my path now or I'm going to accidentally end up there at some point in the future, which is a bad scenario for me.
Now, Travis, when you get into podcasting, because I do see some people, they get into podcasting and they think, oh, I could make an income very, very quickly to replace my job. What was your experience? How long did it take for you to actually generate a little bit enough money to feel like, okay, I've got something here?
Yeah, the common misconception is exactly what you just said, is like, I'm going to build this show and I'm going to hit launch. I'm going to get my 1 million downloads and then I'll just like sit on the beach and collect sponsorship paychecks. You know what I mean?
Right.
So obviously that's not how it went for me, and that's not how it goes for anybody anymore. And honestly, like back in the day, 2010, 2011, it was literally the Wild West back there. So if you just got in early enough, when there's only 700 other podcasts and there's 5 million podcast listeners, and that goes up to 25 million podcast listeners, you can ride that wave a good amount, right? But not anymore. And so that was the problem for me, is that no shade at all to the mentors that I had along the way. It was just the fact that the mentors that I was getting advice from, they had built their shows back in, 2012, 2013. So when I started my show in 2017, there's just a different landscape. I did all the things that they told me to do, but the numbers didn't follow.
What do you think has changed from in your opinion?
It's really the saturation piece that's changed significantly, and not even in a bad way, Dan. Like a lot of people use that as an excuse to not start a podcast. Is like, well, it's too saturated. And it's
too
like,
competitive.
Okay, yeah, sure. But if that's your excuse, then you're never going to do anything. You know what I mean? Like everything's saturated. There's 35 million YouTube channels. There's 500 million blogs. Like there's like 500,000 books that come out every single year, but you don't see people being like, oh, I'm not going to write a book because there's too many of them, but for some reason people use that as an excuse around podcasting when there's only 1 million podcasts. So like 1/35 of YouTube channels, 1/500th of blogs, you know what I mean? So you can't use that as an excuse. That is the biggest thing that changed in the industry, is just the fact that that's why people like, the Joe Rogans of the world have done so well in the space, is like, yes, he's an interesting person. Yes, he's an intriguing character. And yes, he had access to high-level guests that he was able to bring on a show, but he started at the right time. There, you got to always mix in a little bit of luck and a little bit of timing into the equation. And he hit it right at that inflection point when there just wasn't a lot of other podcasts to choose from at the time. And so when podcast listening became more readily available to people with the invention of the iPhone and applications coming onto the devices, people just started looking for those shows that were already in the top charts when there was only, 100,000 listeners or whatever. So those shows were able just to continue just to ride that wave up to the top, when now, Joe Rogan gets 100 million plus downloads every single month on his show. So that has to be one of the biggest things that's changed. It's just, it's saturated. So you have to grow it purposefully. It's not going to happen on accident. You can't just bump up into the top charts or hit new and noteworthy and then just have this big, incoming downfall or a deluge of downloads. You know what I mean? Like it's just not going to happen anymore. You have to be intentional and you have to be purposeful and you have to treat it like an actual business.
Yes. And wouldn't you say also, I think consistency is key, that this is not something that, oh, I did 10 episodes, it didn't kind of go anywhere, and I'll try my best, no one wants to be on my show, like, oh, this doesn't work, like that kind of thing. Actually, let me ask a different question. How many shows did you do until you hit that maybe 1 million downloads?
400. Yeah.
Listen to Travis. It's not 4, it's not 40, it's not 100, it's 400.
Yeah. People have such a low tolerance for the obstacles. It's such a low tolerance for the pain that those obstacles bring, because it feels bad, right? When you're creating, because I've been doing 3 episodes a week since I started. So when you're creating that much content and you're putting that much effort into something and it's not having any sort of return, it starts to really, really start to just irritate and make you feel bad about yourself.
Self-doubt for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. It nurtures those self-doubts, that voice inside your head that's telling you you're not good enough is just being like, yeah, you were right. You aren't good enough. You've been doing this for 7 months. But then when you really look at it in the grand scheme of things, 7 months is not a long time to do anything at all. Like name a field that you can get to the top of in 7 months. That's just not, it's a completely unrealistic expectation of what's going to come to you, especially if you've never done anything prior to that would set you up in a different way to be able to take advantage of it in a faster time frame. You know what I mean? So people just come to the table with completely unrealistic expectations. And when, come up against that first obstacle, it's just like, oh man, I wasn't expecting this to be difficult. You know what I mean? May as well stop doing it. So yeah, that just wasn't the option for me.
It goes back to the original question. So how long it took you to like actually generate some income from the podcast, just to set this expectation for any one of my listeners who want to become a podcasters?
Yeah, so this was one of the things that I think I actually did pretty well was when I realized that the downloads weren't coming. So because I hit the top charts first week of launch, I did all the things, I had an amazing launch, did all the things I was supposed to do, but the downloads didn't follow. And so at that point I had a decision basically like either quit or figure out a different way to make this work. And so that's kind of what I teach people, Dan. It's called, I call it the credibility first method. Instead of worrying about downloads coming in to allow you to go get credible guests, to allow you to go do these other things and then get more downloads. For me, it was like, okay, if I'm going to make my content good, I'm going to start at the very beginning going for the best guests that I could possibly get a hold of. And so what I ended up doing is I ended up monetizing my show when I had less than 200 downloads an episode.
Oh, wow. That's very good.
But it was just through listening to my audience and creating something that I knew would be valuable for the audience that I had created and listened to. So Ryan Levesque calls it the ask method. It's basically just like you build an audience around a certain topic or niche, and then you build a community within that audience, and you get to know that audience's needs and desires and wants. And at the time, I had zero online business experience at all. I was just a door-to-door sales guy that was trying to get into this world. So I was just creating content, and it's called Build Your Network. So I talked about networking, relationships, and I was just like, I want to help people understand the importance of having good people in your life, because I think it's a super valuable skill set to have. And then I listened to that audience and had literally, Dan, I did one-on-one phone calls, free one-on-one phone calls for anybody in my audience that would do it. And I got to know my audience on a very intimate level, ask them questions like, hey, what's an obstacle when it comes to networking? What's an obstacle that you're coming up against that I could create more content around? And then I would keep notes of those things. And then I released my first ever quote unquote mastermind, like 6 months into my show. So to answer your question, it was about 6 months into my show that I monetized for the first time. But when I say I monetized, I mean, it was like a 3-month thing that I charged like, I don't know, $600 for or something like that. It was a wash. It was a total wash. I did not make any money on it at all. It was just
but it's like first offer.
Yeah. And the first time I remember this guy, the first dollar I ever made in my like online business, I'll never forget it because it was probably the most important dollar, right? It just proves that this is real.
1,000%.
It was basically a guy who had been a fan of the show. And I was on a phone call with him and I told him that I was thinking about releasing a course on networking. It was going to be $300 or something. And by the time we hung up the phone, I got a notification, I pulled it up and he had PayPal'd me the $300 and said, let me know when it comes out. And that was the first dollar I ever made. I was like, wow, this guy believes that much in what I do and trusts me that much to deliver on a piece of like course material that hasn't even begun to exist. Like I literally just told you.
That's an idea. That's it.
Yeah. Yes. And you paid me for that. And that by itself was like, wow, there's something to this. You know what I mean? And it ended up being the mastermind. He joined the mastermind that I remember calling him up and saying, hey, sorry to mislead you. I'll give you your money back. I'm not doing a course. I'm doing a mastermind. It's going to be like $800 or whatever. And immediately he sent me the difference between the 300 and whatever that price point was. I'm blanking on the price point right now, but yeah, that was the first dollar I've made online. And it was the power of podcasting to me is the ability, the intimacy that you have with your audience and the ability to create trust on a faster basis than any sort of other content creation that exists. And that.
So I think for anyone that's listening is you don't need to think about as I'm not a podcaster. That's not what I do. I don't have radio experience and I don't know anybody that I can interview or whatever mental hurdles that you might have right now, challenges, is simply not true because I believe anyone needs some kind of platform. Now, it could be a podcast, it could be a YouTube channel, it could be Instagram, whatever it might be. We need some kind of platform, right? Yep. And podcast, in my opinion, is one of the easiest things to start because video takes more skill. It takes more setup. It takes a little bit more of everything, right? Yep. Editing but podcast, you can get a recorder, you can get a mic, you can get it from Amazon, a little Yeti mic, a little headset.
$50. Yep, exactly.
You're good to go. It doesn't cost a lot of money. I'll share a quick story with you. This is before podcast. My very first, when I was a copywriter, I'm talking about when I was 20 somewhat years old. And I had the idea, I wanted to get more clients, copywriting clients. Now I was a young guy, 20 somewhat years old, with an accent, it's tough to get clients, right? So
Sure.
I came up with the idea, this is like way before, what if I interview some of the great copywriters in the world, okay? And we're talking about like Travis, at the time I was using a mini cassette tape recorder. That's how early this was, okay? And I would contact these copywriters. Now I'm talking about back in the days, big names, Joe Vitale, Michael Masterson. What's amazing is like, I'm this young guy in my 1-bedroom apartment, emailing them, hey, would you like to be in my product, right? I contact, I think 20 somewhat people. Almost all of them said yes, except one.
Wow.
Okay. And then I had to
a list like that.
Yeah. I just asked. That was it. I had no credibility. I had no audience. I just asked. I said, sure. What I did is I had the phone, like my telephone, my landline. I have my tape recorder. I recorded interview like this.
Just holding it up to the phone.
Just and I want to make sure it's closer to them, not me, because it's too loud. Like there's no volume control. There's this, right? And I had to pause.
Leveling those sound,
because the mini cassette tape only has so long. I said, pause. I need to switch the other side and then do it, right? And I end up putting together this product. That's why I hear people say, oh, I don't know anybody. You don't need to know anybody.
Yeah.
I didn't know anybody. I was just like, like an entrepreneur young kid. But I asked them and they said yes. And what I did is then I pay a friend of mine to interview me. Right?
Yeah. And put yourself in the same.
Exactly it. That's exactly how I did the marketing, right?
Right.
I was 22, I think something like that.
Yeah.
And then when I sit down with a client, I would say, hey, look at this copywriting, all these are great masters. Well, but they charge, $15,000, $20,000 to write copy. Mine is like 3K, 5K. Oh, okay. Boom. That's how I was getting clients.
That is still something we teach to this day, is something that we've tried to actually really popularize with our clients. We do also some production work and stuff and help a lot of entrepreneurs who are just too busy to start a podcast. We help them do all those types of things. And one of the big things we focus on, how can we take your offer and make it attractive to not just your audience, but to the guests that you're bringing onto your show, which is exactly the way that we do it, because it's relational selling. It's selling without not really selling, because all you're really focused on is creating good content and building a good relationship. But if you happen to craft your reach out list to be full of a bunch of prospects that happened to potentially benefit from your core offer, and then you happen to mention that, on the interview, a quick advertisement, ad read at the very beginning that, hey, we have this offer that helps these people, then you're going to get some business from that at some point. And you're doing it in a way that's just super, super laid back. You're not having to, this isn't jumping on a bunch of sales calls. This isn't trying to cold call anybody. It's not trying to ask these people for favors. Like, you're literally just like, hey, I want to highlight you. But first, before we get into that, really quickly, I just want to do this quick ad read for my audience. Boom, boom, boom. And they're just kind of a fly on the wall, listening into that ad read and going like, oh, wow, they have this thing that I'm literally just did it recently. Had a client for podcasting come in from being a guest on my podcast, because I mentioned that at the beginning. And at the end of the podcast interview, he was like, hey man, at the beginning of this, you mentioned something about, creating podcasts for people. I'd like to talk to you about that, because we've been thinking about doing it, but I just don't know how to do it. Nobody on my team does. So we just would rather hire somebody, that I trust to get the job done. I was like, oh yeah, we can definitely do that. Let's set up a call next week and, we'll go through it. But yes, that exactly what you're talking about, man. We still try to help a lot of people set up shows for that reason, even if they never even launch their show. You know what I mean? Even if they never get a single download, it's still a fantastic way to at least build relationships with the ideal people you want to be building relationships within your industry or your niche.
Yes, you can use it so many other, you can use it to build network, of course. You can use it to as a way to talk to your ideal prospect. This is one thing to say, hey, you want to buy something, or hey, do you want to be on my show? Right?
Right. The ask is so much easier.
Yeah, sure. Let's say if I am, hypothetically, I'm selling to dentists. Let's say I have a program, a service, a software, whatever it might be. You call the dentist, oh, hey, doctor so-and-so, would you like to be on my, dentist success show? Oh, sure. Now you're spending 30 minutes, 45 minutes, an hour with someone back and forth. And naturally, it's a very organic thing that by the end, hey, how can I add value to what you do? By the way, I have this offer. Oh yeah, let's talk a little bit more about it. Your chances of getting through is way higher. I won't say 100%, but it's way higher than you try to sell them something.
The rapport that you have, the trust that you built. And I tell this for anybody that's in a higher ticket or high transaction. I know that like your audience is really big into high ticket stuff, like high trust transactions. So like financial advisors, real estate investors, anybody that's trying to get private capital from other people. I'm like, start a podcast, man. Like it's just a great way to have a 2-hour conversation talking about things that you want to eat. Like, don't even talk about investing. I don't care. Like the point is you're building rapport with somebody that you want to get to know, because like you want that person to trust you enough to be able to invest their money wisely. Like you're building a relationship from not even asking them about investments. You know what I mean? It's just the fact that now they trust you, and that and trust has to be one of the, if not the biggest, one of the biggest barriers to any sale that happens, any transaction that happens. I say that, you know, if people don't trust, they won't transact.
And one of the things I've learned is if you might be thinking that, oh, I don't have the credibility. I'm telling you, I have interviewed, I don't know how many people since early, like when I was a nobody, right? Rarely, like very rare, you have someone asking you, well, how many listeners do you have? Like rarely. I'm talking like maybe 5 out of 100.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had very, very, very similar experience. I found that the more I focused on, and this is kind of what I've become almost known for in this space, is getting just good guests.
Yes.
And I figured out that the more that I focused on just making sure that my content was so good, people just didn't care about anything else, because we took away all resistance to saying yes at the very beginning. Because when I reached out, it was like, hey, so-and-so, you know, would love to have you on the show. Would love to add you to this awesome lineup. Been blessed to have people like, and then I'll name like 20 names. I'll literally go to their Instagram. I still do this to this day for people that I'm trying to reach out to. I'll go to their Instagram, look at who they follow, and then see all the people that they follow that I've had on my show already. And then in the reach out, I include every single name of all of the people that I know that they know and follow. And even before I had good downloads, like people just didn't ask, they didn't reply and go, well, how many downloads do you have? Because it's just too credible for them to say no to, you know what I mean? Like it's too, they just say yes. Why not? Like it doesn't, if those 15 people would do it, I know, like, and trust them already. I've done business with them already. If they trust this guy, then he must be a pretty good dude. Let's go ahead and hop on an interview. You know what I mean? And then the more you do that, the easier every single reach out becomes. All you need is the first one.
Yes.
You know what I mean?
I call that the kingpin guest, right?
Yes.
You get that first one, the rest is easy. It's like the cool kids club strategy, right? How do you get into the cool kids club? You get one of the cool kids, you get to know the person, they bring you in, you're a cool kid, right?
That's exactly right. It works the same way. And
it works exactly the same way.
In the real world, yeah.
Yes. So Travis, share with us where like maybe 2 or 3, like I want to talk strategies, right? Let's say someone is starting a podcast or they already have a podcast. Like what would you recommend? Like give me something that's like unusual, something that really works to grow the podcast, get the downloads, get the reviews. Like what do we need to do?
Yeah, growing a podcast is, I think, one of the more difficult platforms to grow because of how independent it is of all of the other platforms. Right? Like all the other platforms kind of work together. Like if you create a YouTube video, you can like grab a snippet and put it on Instagram and like put it on Facebook and throw it on LinkedIn. Podcasting is just this audio content platform, and no other platform exists like that. So it's a little bit more difficult to grow, and it doesn't really integrate as easily with everything else. And so even
people can't really run ads to like,
right. That's the thing, is like if you do, right, you're just wasting money. Like if you're going to run Facebook or Google ads or any of that kind of thing for your podcast, you better have deep pockets. You know what I mean? Like you gotta be Reid Hoffman level. Like when Reid Hoffman ran Masters of Scale, I'm not sure the exact number, but I know he spent a good amount of money on Facebook ads, Google ads, stuff like that. But I mean, the dude just exited LinkedIn. He was doing all right for himself. I think he could spend a little bit of money on getting listeners for his new show, right?
It's play money. It doesn't really
yeah, right. But you like sitting in your living room in your boxers, like trying to, you know what I mean? Like you're probably not going to figure it out. So what I tell people is always advertise on the platform you're trying to build the audience on.
Bingo. Love that. 100%.
So if you are looking to grow your podcast audience, then you have to reach people on that platform, because one of the craziest companies to me is YouTube. Like 2 billion monthly active users now on YouTube. I am personally not a YouTube watcher. I don't watch, I don't really consume almost anything on YouTube. If somebody sends me a video, I'll watch it, but I'm almost never on YouTube. And so if you're running YouTube ads to get people to listen to your podcast. Like I'm not over there though. I listen to a ton of podcasts, but you're trying to reach me on YouTube. You're trying to reach me on Google. You're trying to reach me on Facebook. Like you got to reach me where the platform is. And not to mention podcasting specifically, there's like 300 to 400 million podcast listeners, I want to say. But that's a fraction of 2 billion. So if you're trying to run YouTube ads or Google ads, that's 2 billion users.
Wasting a
How
big
do you
chunk
know?
of money.
Right, exactly. You don't even know if this person listens to podcasts, but you're putting an ad in front of them. How many more impressions are you putting in front of people that don't even listen to podcasts? So now your job is even more difficult because you're not just trying to convince them to listen to your podcast. You're trying to convince them to listen to podcasts. You're trying to convince them to consume a completely new type of media that they never consumed before. So your job becomes infinitely harder with the money that you're spending on those other platforms. So if you're trying to grow your podcast audience, you have to grow it through podcasting platforms or podcasts specifically. So there's a couple ways to do that. Apple Podcast doesn't have an ad platform, and it doesn't seem to be hurting their bottom line at all. So, do whatever you want to do, Apple, I guess. $2 trillion isn't too bad. And so I'm sure they're not missing out on having an open ad platform. But because of that, you got to kind of get a little bit creative. So look for different ad platforms, different media players that have their own users that are monetizing through either sponsors on a free application or through ad spend from creators, and spend money on those platforms.
Can you give me some examples?
Yes. And now that Spotify has their own platform, you can run audio ads on Spotify. You can actually target people who recently listened to podcasts within certain categories. The ad will not reach them on the podcast, but the ad will reach them in their music playlist after they've listened to if they've listened to a podcast within a certain amount of time. So you can put audio ads on Spotify. You can buy ad space on platforms like Overcast. You can buy ads on Castbox, those different platforms that have their own user base. And they're infinitely smaller than something like Apple Podcasts, but smaller than Apple Podcasts is still really big. They still have 20, 30 million users who you can advertise and put your show in front of. So you can select the people that you're putting it in front of in terms of like what audience do you want. If there's a bunch of other podcasts that you follow that your podcast would be similar to, you can tell those platforms to target the listeners of that podcast to send them notifications to subscribe to your podcast. That would be the first way, is buying ads on platforms. And then the other way would be to get on other people's shows as a guest, like exactly what we're doing right now. Or the third way would be to actually purchase ad space on other people's podcasts, like an actual sponsor would. Like when you hear a ZipRecruiter ad on your favorite podcast or whatever, you can also buy those ad spots. So those would be the three ways that I would spend money. If you're going to spend money, spend money those ways. Don't try to use Google or Facebook or any of the ways that you're used to advertising.
Great tips. And for those who maybe they don't have a lot of money, they need to grow kind of organically, what could they do? So they could go on other people's show. They could talk about their podcast. So that's
number one.
That's number one. What other ways that they could grow kind of organically, that they can earn their way kind of?
Sure. So when I started, a few of the biggest things for me was getting other people's shows. And then I spent a lot of time in Facebook groups and then going to live events that had my audience members at them. You have to get clear on who your audience is. That's why you have to niche down the topic of your show. You got to get clear on who that person is so that you know where to go reach them. If you don't even know who that person is, how are you going to go, get to know those people? So I would just join a bunch of Facebook groups. I would get in there and start adding value. And I started getting like 300-400 comments on posts that I would put in Facebook groups. And then what happens is you have to make sure that you optimize your Facebook profile first before you go do that. Because if you're getting a ton of traffic into your profile because they're wondering who this guy is, but you have a profile picture of like your cat wearing your favorite football jersey, it doesn't really do much.
Nothing wrong with cat, but
yeah.
Right? Yeah. It won't bring you any listeners.
Right, exactly. So you got to kind of take advantage of that like online billboard space that you have with your cover photo and your profile picture and your featured photos and your bio links and profile and all that kind of stuff. Another way that I did it is again through those podcasting platforms. One of my mentors told me when he started his show, one of his big inflection points in his growth was that Stitcher featured him. as one of their like picks or whatever on, new shows or editors picks or whatever on the front page of their application. And at the time, it was like 2012, 2013, they had just come out and they were starting to skyrocket with users. So his show got lifted up in a really huge way.
Yeah.
And when he told me that in like 2017, I was like, okay, well, that's good advice for in 2012 when Stitcher started. But like now, what do I do? Thought about it for a second, was like, okay, well, there's a bunch of these applications that are coming out. So what I did is I just kept an eye on that. And then whenever I would see a new one pop up, or I would make a list of a bunch of the older ones, I reached out to somebody there. I tried to go, you can get a Chrome extension called hunter.io. I think that's what it's called. And it'll scrape a website and give you the email addresses that are associated with that domain. So I grabbed those emails and then I would just start shooting cold emails out to people that were on the team at that application.
Virtual door to door.
Yeah, it's exactly right. That's exactly right. Yeah. You get that thick skin when you go door to door for like 5 years, like I did. So I just started setting stuff out and most of the people ignored me. I got a couple responses back that were no's, but there was one platform that said yes. And they were like, hey, if you do an ad read at the beginning and the end of your show to send your listeners to use our application, we'll put you in our editor's pick section for a week. So you do it for a week, we'll do it for a week. And I was like, okay, great. Nice. I'll do it, whatever, to grow my show. This is like 4 months in.
Yes.
And so they put me on there. I did the ad read for a week. I took the ad read off and then I looked back at the application and my show is still there. Dan, it took 7 months for them to take my show down from the editor's pick section.
Wow.
And just on that one platform, my show went from 20, because it's a platform that actually shows you your subscriber count, which is rare. I had like 22 subscribers on that platform at the beginning of that. By the end of that feature, I had like 8,000 subscribers on that platform. Wow. And that was all totally for free in exchange for an ad read that I did on my show for like a week and a half. So that was one of the big ways, is like looking for platform partnerships that you can start to cultivate relationships, which is another reason to get out and go to industry type events. Because if you go to Podcast Movement or Podfest or some of these other events, you're going to meet a lot of those app creators and you're going to meet a lot of those hopefuls who maybe have a great user base, but don't monetize it super well. And maybe they're looking for partnerships. You just never know. That's why I say you got to get out and you got to show up wherever you want to be growing. And that's just going to be engineering a lot more of that serendipity in your life to get some of those organic spikes. So the last way, I'll make it real quick. The last way is just is not just being a guest on other shows, but getting good quality guests on your show. And then doing your absolute best to make it a good interview so that they're actually likely to share it and not just hoard it and ignore you when you reach out and ask them to share the content. So that would be that last tip.
Yes. And then by doing a good job as a host, then they are much more likely. And that has to do with doing your homework, your preparation.
Correct.
Because I see it sometimes, podcasters when they're doing a lot of shows, the qualities is not there. Example, if they bring on someone who is promoting the latest book, right? You better have read the book, because then you can talk about it. You have done your preparation. You have your questions ready to go. It makes a big difference because the audience could tell the difference. Sometimes you see this on news a lot, right? On TVs, they bring on a certain guest. Clearly, the interviewer has no clue. Right? Oh, you have a book? Oh, talk about your book. They don't even know what the book title is, right? They clearly have not read the book.
Name the whole time. Right. I was listening to a friend of mine. His name is Jordan Harbinger. He's got a giant podcast, one of the best podcasters out there. And one of my favorite interviewers and a good mentor friend, listening to him interview Guy Raz, who has How I Built This from NPR, another huge interview-based entrepreneurial show. And just for some context for those listening, in terms of like preparation for interviews and how serious of a skill set it is, these guys who are at the top of their game will spend anywhere between 10 and 20 hours researching each guest that comes on their show.
Yes.
So that provides a little bit of context into like what we mean, what Dan and I are talking about by really maximizing the interview. Like getting the guest is the first part, and that's a difficult enough process. But once you get the guest, you have to maximize the time that you have with them, or they're never going to share the content that you create.
Yes. And I almost think of it, in my case, the production that we have is before, during, and after. So before we bring someone on, how do we do outreach? How do we filter? How do we bring them on? How do we schedule all that, right? How do I make sure to get them prepared? Example, let's say this podcast, you would get the instructions ahead of time, turn on the camera, like be like, I'm talking very clear instructions. Don't assume, right? And then you go into during, you do a good job, you ask good questions, create an amazing episode. Then afterwards, of post-production and distribution and sharing, all those things. So it's not just, oh, I guess I'll turn on a recorder and just shoot the breeze.
Yeah, right.
No. That's not what we're talking about, right?
Dan, you at this point, you've been on what? Hundreds of shows? Yeah, probably close to 1,000. Yeah. When you come out of an interview,
yes,
isn't there a different feeling that you get when you came out of an interview with somebody that is actually a professional host versus somebody who's just like, oh, well, I guess we'll
talk about what you do.
Get started. You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. Like, you know, what's new with you? How's the weather? Like, it's just, it's such a completely different feeling when you hop off of a call with somebody that actually did their job. You feel almost like fired up instead of drained.
You're more excited, right? You open up, you want to share, and
they're hyping you, you know what I mean?
So like an interviewee, even if they ask questions that we've never been asked, we like it.
Yeah,
right? we like that. Like, oh, that's a good question, right? That's
the number one compliment that I try to get and that I have gotten from people is like, I've never been asked that before, or oh man, oh yeah, that was an awesome conversation. I've never gone into this kind of stuff before, so I'll definitely be sharing that one out. That if you're wondering why people don't share your content, that's it.
That's it.
If you're wondering why people don't share their content is because like that person that we're talking about before that's promoting their book, you're their 12th interview that they've done in the last 2 or 3 days. And every single interviewer was asking them the same laundry list of questions. What inspired you to become an entrepreneur? What inspired, like everybody's asking the same exact, like just completely bland, boring questions. And so when you can come in and mix it up and ask them a question while drawing in context from a piece of their childhood that you did extra research to find out, it's like an immediate refresher. It's their entire body language changes when I'm on interviews with people and I ask a question like that. They get re-engaged. They're no longer on autopilot, just answering questions one after the other because they just did 12 interviews that were exactly the same. They're actually having a real conversation, which allows you to leave a much better impression on them and increases the likelihood of them sharing.
Yes, and I always believe the more personal, the more universal, right? The more personal you are, the more kind of intimate conversations, right, with a guest.
Yes.
Right? The stories, the audience could relate much more versus a very shallow kind of a question. The good guests they usually, almost all the time, they are willing to share. Just no one asks good questions, right? That's the problem.
Exactly. And the problem is too, Dan, is that I think a lot of hosts assume that just the practical piece is enough. If I just get the 3 or 4 steps to, like creating, like, so yesterday I interviewed Sean Cannell, who's a, really well-known YouTuber, and he YouTubes about helping people with YouTube channels. And he's got over 1 million subscribers and a big audience and all this stuff. And we got off the interview and he told me like, oh yeah, nobody ever asked about the stuff that you asked about. And so like using that as an example, most people are going for that practicality piece of like, well, give me, the 5 best things to do when you start your new YouTube channel or whatever. What I've found, and I'm sure that, you'd be able to speak in this as well, is that if you don't get the story first, a lot of times that practicality just misses the mark. Like people aren't motivated, or like I tell people all the time, you got to have a piece of content that inspires, motivates, and makes people want to take action. Yes. Like inspire, motivate, and give me the action steps. All 3 of those things, because if they just get the action steps, they might not, they may still be stuck in their old mindset of the story that they're telling themselves of like, well, it's possible for Sean to build a YouTube channel, but it's not possible
for you to say.
Yeah, right. Exactly. But when we pull that story out first and you hear about all the hardships that he went through, the struggles that he went through, then it starts to liken it to where you are right now. And you start going, man, I think I could actually do this. And then you get the practicality piece there. Then it's like, okay, I'm inspired. I'm motivated to take action.
I want to take action.
I have the steps to do so. Yes. You know what I mean? You have to have all those pieces.
And what are some of the tools that someone needs to run a podcast? Like for someone, it's okay, get it. I'm getting started. I have some of the tips. I know the niche that I want to get into. Like what are some of the tools that you use or you recommend your clients to use?
From the mic that I'm using right now is an upgrade. I just upgraded my studio setup like, I don't know, 4 or 5 months ago. But for almost the first full 3 years of my show, I used the same USB microphone. It cost me $60. It was a Audio Technica ATR 2100.
Nice.
It cost me $60 on Amazon. I used it. It was a USB plugin. So there's no interface. There's no, like right now I'm plugged into my Rodecaster Pro, all that kind of stuff. There's nothing like that. It's just a microphone, plugs in my computer. That's really like base answer. That's all you really need is a little bit better audio quality, because if you front the money for the $50 that it costs to get like that type of a microphone, the difference between that and your built-in audio on your computer or your AirPod speaker is huge. It's a phenomenal difference. The difference between that $50 microphone and this $400 microphone is minute. You don't need to go spend $3,000 on podcasting equipment. You spend a minimal amount on that kind of stuff. And then if it's me and if I'm giving the advice, I tell people don't ever mess with the post-production or editing. I'll hire that out from the very beginning.
Outsource.
Yes. But if you have to, you can even use free tools for that. If you're on MacBook, there's a free tool called GarageBand that's pre-programmed in every Mac device, essentially. So it's totally free. Use that to edit your audio. If you're on Android or PC, you're going to use Audacity, a totally free tool. Like it does not take a lot of tools. The only really ones that I would really recommend, especially for interview shows, would be a scheduler and your microphone. And that's really, that's it to get started, man.
Yes, you don't need fancy equipment. What would be also some of the key, this is like something I want to share with my team, what's key performance indicators or key metrics that you look at, like in terms of like downloads or things like that? What do you look at?
Yeah, that is almost something that each person has to answer separately, because it depends on what your goals are for creating the show.
Okay.
If your goals are sheer audience growth, I'll answer it for audience growth, assuming that that's the thing that we're talking about.
Yes.
The things that I always look for are downloads, and then I want to look for ratings, and I want to look for reviews. So downloads, ratings, and reviews are going to be the big things that I look for in terms of what your KPIs are going to be for your podcast audience growth. Because that's really all sponsors care about. So like if you're going for audience growth and you want to monetize through sponsorships, they want to see how many downloads. They want to know how many downloads did this particular episode get within 30 days of launching this episode. Other than that, they don't really care about anything.
And how many downloads we need to have before we even approach sponsors?
Minimum. Especially if you're going to like an agency, you got to have 5,000 to 10,000 downloads an episode minimum to get to that point. And that's within that 30 days, not 5,000 to 10,000 downloads in that episode in the lifetime of the episode. That's been 3.5 years. Yes. Like it's got to be within 30 days.
Got it.
And they usually do it on a cost per 1,000 downloads, which will give you an idea. But that CPM, that cost per 1,000 downloads, is usually $20 to $30. So if you have 3,000 downloads a month total, you know what I mean? Like you're talking max amount of money that you're going to make is, $400 on sponsorship revenue. So it's just, to me, that's why I always tell people, like, sell your own products or services until you get to the point where you can get sponsors. I still think sponsorship revenue is like the holy grail of podcasting revenue, because you just collect checks essentially in exchange for doing a minute ad read on your show. But at the beginning, you got to be able to put money into the growth of your show to be able to get sponsors. And so I tell people, start with monetizing with your 300 or 400 downloads an episode. Start sending traffic to your own products and services.
It could be an affiliate offer too. It could be sell other people's products, something.
Yep. Affiliate offers and stuff like that are really great as well. Higher ticket affiliate offers specifically, ones that pay real commission. Don't set up your, Audible
not
account.
$5.
Oh, I made $2.50 in commission. Great. Yeah. What are you going to do with $2.50? Yeah. So look for those higher ticket type affiliate offers. But yeah, I tell people, like, start monetizing with higher ticket things at the beginning, and then use that money. Be disciplined with that money. Don't go spend it on a bunch of other dumb stuff. Use that money to specifically grow your audience so that you can get to the point where you can start. Like, so I personally, look at it in a way of, like, if you're not getting at least 50,000 downloads a month, really more like 100,000 downloads a month, then you probably shouldn't be worrying too much about sponsors, in my personal opinion. I don't think it's worth sending the traffic to somebody else until you get to those types of numbers.
Correct. And so let's say someone has a show, they are getting those kind of downloads. What agency can they approach? Where should they go?
Yeah, there's a few of them out there. Off the top of my head, I know Midroll is one of the big podcasting agencies. Blanking on a couple other ones, but if you can get a network to sign you, like Podcast One or like Himalaya or some of these other ones, they'll bring on shows onto their network and then take care of the sponsorship revenue for you. They usually just do like an 80-20 split, 70-30 split, 60-40 split, something like that, based on how many downloads you have and how long it would take for them to recoup their revenue that they're spending on your show. But yeah, you can approach those types of agencies and basically say like, here's our download numbers, here's our audience, and do you have any sponsors for us? And they'll match it for you. Or if you have a smaller download base, what I tell people is go find an offer that works really well for your audience and negotiate your own CPM with like an independent business owner that can do business anywhere in the world.
Just
so like, I'll give you an example. A buddy of mine has a business, a successful business where he opens up retirement accounts, 401k, solo 401ks and self-directed IRAs, stuff like that. It's a good enough service to where if he paid for a 6-month block of sponsorship, he could get one client from it and it would more than pay for the advertising dollars that he spent with me. So like those, if that helps you, if you're listening right now, like if that helps you, those are the type of offers that you want to look for. Is like how much like you're not going to help your buddy selling coffee mugs on e-commerce. You know what I mean? He's not going to advertise on your show. That doesn't make any sense. But if you got a buddy, even if it's like, hey, I run a local podcast on like this local area that I live in, what would that, go get a real estate agent that could make a $12,000 commission by getting a single client from your show and advertise, just put a contract out there, advertise for 6 months and say, this is how many impressions that I get. And I'll also put it into my Facebook group. I'll send it to my email list, like set up different private deals. If you're not anywhere near like 100,000 downloads a month number, then but you still want sponsors, then you got to set up like really private, type of special deals with people who have higher ticket services that can make that money back with one single client instead of having to get an influx of, 250,000 clicks to be able to make a profit.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's also, we're talking about sales. You gotta, you don't wait. Oh, how come no one comes to sponsor my show? You gotta go and get those people. You gotta close the deal.
Exactly
right? No one is gonna be a path to your door. What do you think of? I think when the Joe Rogan Spotify deal happened, I think it changed the podcast world. Like, wouldn't you agree? Because a lot of people, they think, podcast, it's almost feels like it's
That's
like
cute.
it's is it serious? It's not TV, it's not YouTube, it's not Facebook. You hear Instagram story, but you don't hear anyone that's like a podcaster that landed a big deal. So Joe Rogan, $100 million contract with Spotify. It's almost like breaking the 4-minute mile for all the podcasters.
Yeah,
like,
right.
Wow, it could be worth that much money, right? What are your thoughts?
That's exactly right. The last piece that you said there, I think, is the best thing that it does for the industry, is that it puts an objective value on what a podcast audience is worth. Yes. And before that happened, it's all conjecture. It's like, he gets 100 million downloads a month. Like, that's got to be worth something. And everybody's like, yeah, I agree. And then like, that's
how much?
You know what I mean? Yeah, exactly. So, so when they said ink to paper, it's worth over $100 million to us to have you on our platform, not to own your show. All they're doing is it's a licensing. Like they don't own the show. It's still Joe Rogan's.
Yes.
Like, it's just to get the user base. So that set a price on what a podcast listener is worth. So like if you know his numbers, your numbers, you can kind of reverse engineer the math and figure out, like, well, if I want to get to anything that's potentially that type of an offer, then I have to put in this amount of effort to get to that point. But at least you have like a starting point now. They set the price in the industry, which I think is the biggest thing. Plus they legitimized it as a real media outlet. And I don't know if you saw this recently, but President Trump tweeted that he would do, Joe Rogan put out something about doing like hosting a 4-hour presidential debate with President Trump and Joe Biden on his show with no audience. And President Trump actually tweeted and said that he would do it. And I made a post about it a few days ago. We wrote a blog post and a few different pieces of content about it because I thought it was really interesting, because it's probably not going to happen. Let's just be honest, it's not going to happen. But the willingness to make it happen from a sitting US president, again, to me, does the work of solidifying the podcast space as a real form of a media outlet. You know what I mean? Like people aren't worried about doing Howard Stern anymore. People want to do Joe Rogan now. You know what I mean? He
is a new Howard Stern.
Yes, right, exactly. And his deal was bigger than Howard Stern's deal was.
That's
You know
right.
what I mean? Was serious.
Howard wish he could have got into like, a little bit earlier.
And he was
right?
one of the guys. The funny thing is, he was one of the guys that was talking, crap about the podcasting industry when it all first came out. Howard Stern was,
Yes.
if I'm not mistaken, there. So,
Yes.
a lot of people now are just like, oh wow, so this is real then. And that's why you see this big influx of large companies getting into podcasting.
Yes.
You see a lot of venture capital going into podcasting.
Yes.
You see a lot of A-list celebrities that are starting their own podcast to build their own audiences. They're
YouTubers starting podcasts too.
Yes, right. Exactly.
Yes.
It's a real thing now.
And one of the things I do want your perspective on this, then I want to jump into a little bit about your software because I think a lot of people, they approach me and they ask me the question. I have my perspective, but I would love to get your perspective. Someone starting a new podcast and they see, Joe Rogan, the Joe Rogan show, the Tim Ferriss show, the Dan Lok show, right? We use our personal brand to launch the show and it's successful. But for someone who's like new, I tell them, when you are just getting started, you don't have a name yet. Using your name, there's a risk involved because who are you, right? Versus if you have something that's more topic focused, that's more niche, it's easier to get traction because as you grow that audience, they tune in because they want to listen to your guests and all that. When you get bigger, then maybe you can think about personal branding it. But that's my recommendation. Well, what's your recommendation?
Yeah, I 100% agree. There's three things that matter in iTunes search: the title of your show, the author name, and your description.
Yeah.
So if your title is your name, but you don't have an audience anywhere on any platform, nobody's searching for your name. I'm sorry. It's just that's what's happening. Like, that's why my show isn't the Travis Chappell Show. It's called Build Your Network. Because it's extremely crystal clear what the show is about. It's probably something about, I don't know,
build your network.
You know what I mean? So like when people go in iTunes and they search networking and they search business networking, or they search for relationship building or something like that, and then they see my show pop up, they see that show name, it immediately resonates with them and they want to click in to see what's going on.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So if it's just your name, then it's such an easy scroll by. Like if you just see somebody's name and you don't know them, like scroll. You want to be a scroll stopper. You know what I mean? Like you want people to stop and be like, oh, build your network. That's exactly what I'm looking for. Like, I need help with this networking thing because I'm totally lost, but I know it's important.
Yes.
So yes, I 100% agree with your.
Awesome. Yeah, because don't feel like, oh, but they have Tim Ferriss has done it, Joe Rogan has done it. Like, yes, that's a different story, right?
Yes, right.
That's
you didn't see the 2 decades of work that went in before.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like, you didn't see the come up. All you're seeing is the result right now and trying to mimic that result. Yes. You got to mimic like the steps to get to that result. Process. You got to become the person that's capable of achieving that result in order to be able to actually get it.
And think about how long they've been doing it. Like Joe Rogan's been on TV, Fear Factor, like how long it's been in the media business, right? So like the 100 million is not like, it's decades leading up to it, right?
Exactly.
So chances are when you're getting started, exactly. It's gonna take time. So talk to us about your new software, Guestio. I would love to learn more about it. How does it work and who does it help?
Yes, sir. So I'm super stoked about this. This has been our biggest project that we've worked on really to date. Of all the projects we've worked on, this is definitely the biggest one. And one that I'm most excited for. Basically, I was kind of alluding to it earlier, but the number one question that kept coming up for me from audience members or from people that I met at conferences and things was, how did you get the guest? That was always the question. Is like, hey, you got, so you got John Maxwell and you got Tillman Fertitta, the owner of The Rock. Like, how did you get these people? What are you doing? Who are you talking to? And so I came out with these like different trainings and things like that. I would try to help people out with like, oh, use this verbiage instead of that verbiage, or use this strategy instead of that strategy, use this platform for reach out instead of that platform, just different things like that. But ultimately, that's still not going to create the real solution because that takes a lot of work. It takes months of patience and persistence and reaching out. And just a lot of people not even don't want to do that, but just don't have time to put it into it. I had time at the beginning because I wasn't making any money on it. I just wanted it to be that good. So I had like the only time that I spent on my podcast was in reach out and trying to learn how to get connected to people. And so a lot of people just don't have that time. So what we did was we built the solution to that, which is our software that we're calling Guestio. And essentially what it is, it's a guest and show marketplace where creators, content creators of any sort, not just podcasters, YouTubers, bloggers, authors, contributors to, publications, whatever it is that you do in terms of content. If you need to interview people for your content, then Guestio is the solution. So it's a marketplace to go find people that you actually want to interview, because there were a few other products on the market that I looked for. And again, this is a problem that I had that I was solving, because I looked at other products and was just like, there's no offense to any of these people, but that's not the person that I'm looking for. You know what I mean? Like, I don't recognize any of these names. I don't know what any of these people are doing. Like, I'm trying to get the best quality person I could possibly get. So what we did is we made it a pay-to-play marketplace. So we were able to have, like, one of our big launch names is someone like Manny Pacquiao, but we're able to have someone like Manny Pacquiao on the platform that's going to be a guest because he can charge to be on somebody's show. That's the biggest barrier, right? Like you, Dan, I'm sure you get thousands of reach outs from people that's trying to get you on their podcast and their YouTube channel and all that stuff, right? Yeah. So when you're going through to filter them, you have to filter them based on a completely different set of metrics. Yes. But if somebody comes up to you and just goes, "Hey, I'll pay you $5,000, or I'll donate $5,000 to your favorite charity," or something like that, now it's like, okay, well, now I know for sure that it's worth my time, because they're actually paying for my time. Because I just want to know, am I wasting my time by doing this, or am I not wasting my time by doing this? Yes. And it takes all the guesswork. Again, it's all about lowering that resistance to the yes, right? So we take out all the guesswork and just say, hey, what if I paid you to come on my show? And now that you're paying for that guest appearance. And so we have people that are coming onto the platform that are actually big names that people are going to be able to book. But then we didn't just stop there. What we wanted it to be is really like a holistic solution to the entire interview process. So we ended up building out our own scheduler in the back end, so that if you're only using like one of your, Acuity, Calendly type stuff for podcast bookings, you can get rid of that and use this. The software is totally free. All the features are totally free. So you can go on there, use it to schedule your interviews. We made it super, and because it was only for that one specific event type, we could make it really customizable for that specific event type. So if you're a really busy person, like someone like Manny Pacquiao, maybe you set your availability and you start realizing that, people are booking way too often. Okay, well, we have a feature where you just, you can decide how many bookings are allowed within a certain calendar month and things like that. And then you can select up to 3 times to make sure that the time that is selected is actually going to work for the person that you are trying to interview, things like that. And we built in our own messaging platform that doesn't make you use the application. It will actually just send you a text, but it won't be you obviously won't be giving out your phone number. It'll be going through the application, but you don't have to get into the application to use the messaging, which is one of my biggest complaints of other platforms, is like they want you to use their own messaging. And it's like, look, man, I already got email, I got text message, I got Facebook Messenger, I got, many
last thing I want is Messenger. Right. Makes sense. Yeah.
So we built in the Messenger there. And then we built in downloadable press kits as well. Cause if you're a podcast host, you know how annoying it is to try to go back and forth with people's teams to get like their media bio, to get approved headshots, to get sharing links, to get like all the other like press links and prep work and all that kind of stuff. So we have just downloadable press kits. So as soon as your interview is booked, you can go in and download somebody's press kit and get access to all the information that they're featuring on their press profile, essentially, so that you have it all in one place and your interview can all be super, super seamless as you.
I like that. Very streamlined. Well, because also I think because you've done so many podcasts, so it's like it's built by podcaster for podcaster.
Exactly. Right. Lots of frustrations that we're solving.
Yeah, I could see that. And I could see where someone, if they want to reach certain people, they're willing to pay. It's easier to get those people because they get approached so many times, right?
Yes.
It's like sometimes I get approached by someone, oh, I'm just starting a podcast. Can you be the guest for my first episode? It's not that I want to say no, but I have so many other things I got to do. I always tell them, to build up your podcast to a certain point, I'm more than happy to come back. But we can't do a podcast with like, two people listening to it. It makes no sense.
Exactly.
So I think that's a great model.
if you're that busy, you have to guard your time like that. And so that's been the biggest feedback that I've gotten from like some of the people that we're getting on. Like we have some top people, like top podcasters specifically, and top content creators that are coming onto the platform. That's their biggest reason that they're coming on, is just like, man, that'd be so great. Cause I get so many people asking me and I feel so bad, but I just can't say yes to all the requests that come through. So it'll be so easy just to send them my Guestio link. And if they want to pay for it, they can pay for it. A lot of people are even, like I said, donating that money to charity. They're not even taking the money. They're just like, this is just a way for me to be able to see, yes, exactly, use a filter. But then we also built out all those back-end features and made them all completely free, just so that if you don't have any interest in paying people to be on your show, you can still use Guestio to be your entire workflow process for all of the interviews that you're doing for your show. And then maybe, you know, down the road when you see somebody pop onto the platform that you just can't resist paying for, you can also pay for them. But yeah, all of it's totally free, and we're just trying to make it a really helpful tool for people.
Perfect. And that's on now. It's guestio.com. Guestio.
Correct.
Perfect,
like guest, like be a guest. io.com.
Perfect. And then when are you launching officially the software?
Yeah, so that'll be the first week of October 2020.
Okay,
so,
all right.
As of this recording, we're coming up on it, man. We're getting that anxious, you know, pregame feeling. So we'll see how that launch week goes.
Awesome. And if my audience wants to learn more about your podcast, build your network, what's the easiest way to do that?
Yeah, best way, if you're listening to this right now, whatever podcast app you're listening to this in, just go to that search bar and type in Build Your Network, or Travis Chappell, and I'll pop up right there. Or Instagram's the best way to actually connect with me and send me a message. I'm just at Travis Chappell over there.
Perfect. Okay. Thank you, Travis. I appreciate it. Great insights. I mean, looking forward to using the software, using the platform. I think it's a game changer. It is a tool that is needed in the marketplace. Too many agencies out there right now, like the podcast, they're booking guests and, you know, charging a monthly fee. I think that model is outdated. It doesn't help the guest, and it doesn't help the host.
That's exactly right. Yeah.
I think that model is outdated. Something like this, you get high quality guests. It helps the content creators cut through the noise. I love it.
Love it, man. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. I'm looking forward to the software. I think that it solves a big problem, and I hope that the market feels the same way.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.